On this week's Gridiron Report, we have some Lions roster ideas, some Detroit Tigers talk, Red Wings versus Pistons offseason, and we finish up with some golf and grit of the week. So let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the grit iron report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The grit iron report where the stories are.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast presented by Mic Drop Media. Today is Wednesday, June 7th. And while we don't have any direct Lions news, we do have some Lions roster adjacent stuff to talk about. And at this point in the offseason, we're just begging to talk any sort of NFL, any sort of Lions things. So let's just jump right into that, into the Detroit Lions. Again, we already know what this roster is going to be. It's very unlikely that we make any large moves or anything down the road. I know for weeks we've been talking about Trey Hendrickson, and we'll get into him in a few minutes. And we've talked about a few other guys. There's some miscellaneous random releases across the NFL over the last few weeks, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here. But we know primarily what this roster is going to be. We know what to expect from the boys, but we do have a few things to talk about in that regard. So the first and foremost thing I did notice you and I have talked about since going back before the draft that we were either going to need to prioritize edge in this past draft, and if we are going to go and get specific edges that were out there in the draft, we needed some guys to mentor some of them. And the perfect guy for that role outside of Hutch, who is obviously perfect for that, was a guy like Zadarius Smith. Kind of a guy that we expected, I personally expected to be back by now. Hasn't seen him. The one thing I'd noticed this past week, though, that a few different sports books had some odds on where Zadarius Smith was going to be playing this upcoming season. But the one thing I noticed, Detroit Lions were not in the top 10 to land him in that list. And it was a number, a bunch of different teams. The one thing I noticed was that Detroit Lions weren't in there. And so that's what I had in our show notes. It was interesting that the sportsbook did not expect him to come back to Detroit. Now, with that being said, some changing in our show notes, some changing last night. Again, we record Tuesday night, so this is Monday night at the BET Awards. He was there in attendance, and I guess some of the reporters there asked him about his upcoming season, where he wants to play, everything like that, where he expects to play. And it really does seem like Zadarius Smith is firmly in the camp that he wants to be here, and I think he expects to be here, honestly. And so before I get your thoughts on him and this quote and stuff, here's what he said. So again, asked at the 2025 BET Awards, he said, "We both know where I want to be. Hopefully I can get back to Detroit because of the coaching staff and everybody in the front office are great. When I'm there, I feel like a leader and like I can influence the young guys and do great things. Hopefully I can get back to where I want to be in Detroit." So as I'm reading that, it kind of seems two things, right? It seems like he wants to be back in Detroit. But then at the end, I think he's also saying, hopefully I can get back to where I want to be in Detroit. And I think that maybe that plays into how he tailed off at the end of the season last year. What are your thoughts on just like Zadarius Smith kind of being quiet all offseason, the quote in which he provided us yesterday, and then what kind of value he'd bring this team?
I think I want him back. Yeah, we know that he kind of did taper off a little bit towards the end of last season. I'm probably showing his age a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the Lions, they're pretty like they need more depth at that defensive end position. We talked about it. They didn't really, make any big splashes in, the offseason and free agency. They didn't make any big splashes in the draft as far as a defensive end is concerned. I really do think that they need more depth there. And Zadarius Smith, having him back makes a lot of sense. I mean, he literally just said he wants to be here. Who wouldn't, by the way? I mean, it's still one of the best rosters in football, even though there has been, some turnover in the coaching staff and the offensive line. We talked about that, but still, it's an amazing roster, great head coach, and yeah, I think this team can go far. So if you're Zadarius Smith, of course you want to be back, and really, if I'm Brad Holmes and in this Lions If I'm making moves for the Lions, I think that I do want Zadarius Smith back. It just makes so much sense. You could probably get him for pretty cheap too. I mean, he is older. He said he wants to be here, so I don't know about Zadarius Smith and your negotiating tactic there. But if you say you want to be somewhere, you're probably giving up a little bit of leverage that you could go elsewhere. I know obviously he still could go elsewhere, but yeah, I feel like the Lions could probably get a team friendly deal and get this done, and both parties could be happy. So I'd like to see him stay.
Yeah, his agent has to be ripping his hair out because I agree that kind of just throws. And at this point in his career, he might not be about that the bag chasing and the contract chasing. So he's 32 years old. We talked about him a whole bunch this past offseason. That when we got him at the trade deadline, he was kind of, in my opinion, one of the best acquisitions we could have gotten at the trade deadline. Ended up, making, pulling the trigger on that. And as soon as we got him, we heard from fans around the league who have played with him, because Zadarius has been all around the NFC North specifically, that towards the end of the season, he does start to trail off, and that could be due to his age. It could just be kind of his play style. So we kind of expected that. But I think basically by what he's saying, you and I have been steadfast in this all offseason that if the money is right, if the contract is right, if the offer, or I should say the ask is right, 100% we'd have him back. As soon as we got him here, he was, even before he was even playing, we saw videos of him on the sideline chatting up guys, teaching the young guys from the sideline before he was even suited up, teaching them about how to read offenses, stuff like that. He's still and so just like his coaching, his mentorship, everything about that is invaluable. And then you look at his numbers. So his PFF grades last year, he had a 74.7 overall PFF grade. That's 33rd best out of 211 eligible edge rushers. Yeah. So 33rd overall for what seems to be like you can get him on a team-friendly contract in a position of need, and a guy who's a great mentor. Like, I'm taking that 10 times out of 10. Pass rushing grade, 76.5, which is 21st out of 211 eligible edge rushers. So his pass rush is above, even better than just overall, which is exactly what we need him for. His run defense obviously is a little bit worse, which brings his overall down. His run defense is 62.8, which is 85th out of 211th. But we have one of the best rush defenses in the entire NFL. We don't need another guy to fill the gaps and stop the run. That's why we drafted Tyreek Williams. You need a guy on the edge who can set a hard edge and force everything back in. He had 20 solo tackles last year, 10 sacks, which was good for 15th, 5 assists. So even if he wasn't getting the sacks, he was, forcing the QB back inside, outside, however you want to see it, so others can get the sack there. So it was, I truly, like you and I said, we've been on the Zadarius Smith coming back train this entire offseason. I'm not going to lie. I was, every day that kind of went by and we didn't hear anything, I was fully prepared for him to thank the Lions and just kind of, they were going to say, we're going to kind of go our own way. I figured he wanted to come back, but I figured the Lions maybe weren't interested in having him back, or just we're kind of, thank you for helping us this past year and have a great rest of your career. And that still might be the case. Like, this is only still one-sided, but it definitely gives me more hope that this defensive line, the position of need, the extreme position of need, might still be getting some reinforcements here at some point.
Yeah, but the only thing I will say, though, is Vegas always knows. Vegas is always right. So
yeah.
To see him not in the top 10 for odds to land back in Detroit, the team that he spent, the last 6-7 games with, however long that was last year, it's weird. So, yeah, I don't know if maybe Vegas knows something that we don't know. I mean, I don't know shit about shit. So, with all that being said, though, yeah, I would love to see Big Z back in the Honolulu Blue.
So that's all good and grand, like separate of anything else going on in the NFL. We both would love to have him back here. It seems like the deal would be right. We'd love to have him back for his mentorship alone, and if we can throw him in third downs to try and get a sack, even better. Taking the rest of the climate of the NFL into consideration, it makes that even more important, because we do have some other releases around the NFL that are in one way or another tied to the Detroit Lions. And again, spare me with the stretches. This is an exact Detroit Lions talk. At this point in the offseason, we're dying to talk Lions, and anything we can get, we'll take it. So we did have a few noticeable releases across the NFL. The first and foremost, the Cincinnati Bengals released Jermaine Pratt. So Jermaine Pratt is their captain linebacker that they released kind of surprisingly yesterday or the day before. He's a 29-year-old, 6'3", 250 off-ball linebacker. So this, in my opinion, ties to Detroit in two different ways. One, he was their captain. He's a great leader. He was, like, again, kind of a surprise to Bengal fans that he was released. So the first and foremost, we know Malcolm Rodriguez is going to be out until at least November. It came out, I think, last week. Dan Campbell came out and said Malcolm's out for at least probably we're looking around like a November, maybe pushing Thanksgiving kind of release. Would you add a Jermaine Pratt for the right deal? On the right contract, would you add a Jermaine Pratt to this team if it's only for a few weeks and then as a depth piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more than a depth piece. I mean, this guy's a hell of a player. Just turned 29 last season, 80 solo tackles, 5 tackles for loss. I love that he plays, pretty much the entire season two. He's not really injury prone. 17 games played the last 2 seasons, 15 games played the 2 before that. So seems like he's he definitely, he's got some, wear and tear, going into year, 29, age 29. But yeah, I mean, he's a physical guy. And I do think that he does, firstly, he does add some, certainly he's adding some depth, but I do think, that veteran leadership too, that presence. I mean, he's a captain. I think that does speak volumes. I don't know if the wearing the C means as much as like in the NHL, but still, I mean, it means a lot to captain your team, and just to have that veteran leadership presence as well. And then when you factor in, like you said, that Malcolm Rodriguez is he's going to be out for at least a couple months. I think it makes a ton of sense. I just don't know how much you'd have to pay a guy like Jermaine Pratt, who is, very much in the prime of his career right now, still has a lot of good years left. And he might be costing just a bit more than maybe the Lions are going to want to pay.
Yeah, so I think that's the key, right? So I think it's more surprising for Bengals fans because he was a captain and a beloved player in the locker room for the fans. But you dive into his numbers maybe this means the releasing was less surprising than people think, or maybe this means he might be able to come at a discount. He did see his coverage numbers PFF wise start to drop, which is something that he was really good at when he first came out of college. He was drafted in 2019, so maybe that's a sign of regression, that his coverage numbers are starting to go down. He's starting to regress a little bit. Maybe he had a team best 143 tackles last year, but he had 20 missed tackles. So again, not great. You don't want to see someone missing that many tackles. So maybe that means that he is more. He might be able to sign a more team friendly contract. But I'm with you. I think same with like Zadarius Smith. The more captains and like guys who are familiar and leaders of men you can get in this locker room, with the turnover that we had, are still having with losing Aaron Glenn and Calvin Shepard being first time DC. I think you take any sort of guy who can lead a defense in that locker room, whether it's a starting, like you said, it's going to be a starter for at least, a quarter to half the season. And then if he kind of, taps in and out with Malcolm Rodriguez as he gets ramped up, I think that's a great point. I think the one thing with him though, so he was like I just mentioned, he led the Bengals in tackles last year, the 143. If you recall, the Bengals, who had a bad defense, but their DC, their defensive coordinator, was a really good defensive coordinator. He had a bad team that he was kind of given. He was fired. He's now with the Colts as their DC, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts come calling for Jermaine Pratt and he follows his defensive coordinator there. But the other way in which that this is sort of tied to Detroit is the main sort of reasoning behind this, or the fans' reasoning behind the Cincinnati Bengals coming out and cutting, or I should say releasing Jermaine Pratt, was that they are likely starting to move money around in order to get some of these outstanding holdouts taken care of. So they, not anybody related to Detroit Lions, but their first round draft pick still has not signed his rookie contract because he's holding out, trying to get more money. They're kind of nickel and diming him a little bit. But this is also a large indicator that the Cincinnati Bengals are sort of gearing up to give Trey Hendrickson that deal that he is he is owed. He has earned it, and he is owed. Mm-hmm. So I personally think I see this as a sign that we can not only use Jermaine Pratt in our defense if we want to go that route, but we can also likely put the Trey Hendrickson to Detroit rumors to bed, kind of for once and for all. Trey Hendrickson to Detroit would have been fantastic. He's a little bit older. We went into his numbers a few episodes ago. We've done it a few different times. I didn't ever actually think it was going to come to fruition, and I think this is kind of just like that final nail in the coffin. Trey Hendrickson likely staying in Cincinnati as they're trying to clear some cap space in order to sign him, keep him there long term.
Yeah, it would have been sick. It would have been so sick seeing Trey Hendrickson line up alongside our guy Aiden Hutchinson and just get endless sacks. But yeah, the it's not to be, which is totally fine. Yeah, I do think the defense probably still has holes. We can still fill a couple more. One more guy that has been thrown around a lot, Jair Alexander. I know I have my take on this guy. He's a hell of a player, but would love to hear your thoughts as well. If that could be a potential fit for the Lions.
Yeah, so Jair Alexander, the other notable release this past week for the Green Bay Packers. Jair Alexander is kind of a polarizing player in that he has that attitude that all cornerbacks need, right? We've talked about it, with Terry and Arnold. We talked about it with a number of different guys that in order to play cornerback, which in my opinion, I think it's a pretty common opinion, is one of the most difficult positions to play on the football field. You're usually you're a little bit undersized. Jair Alexander is 5'10". These guys are usually going up against 6'4", 6'5" receivers who can run 4.40s and are just specimens. You need to have that attitude of like, I'm the best player on the field, and Jair Alexander definitely has that. So he is definitely polarizing in that way. But he was released by the Green Bay Packers this past week, likely due to his injuries. Maybe it was a little bit of locker room issues. But I think, and I don't know what kind of deal he's going to end up getting. He's coming off of a 4-year, $84 million extension. So you expect his contract to be a little bit less than that just because he's going out to the market. But I mean, if the contract's right, I think I'm taking him. I mean, if nothing else, like he has another insane talent to teach our guys.
Dude never plays. Like, I mean, do we want to sign this guy and then he's just not going to play for us? I mean, it was hilarious when he's playing for the Packers and he's never playing. He's touted as like their best player, one of their best players on defense, and he plays 7 games this season. I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and I love that from the Lions' perspective. But yeah, do we want to sign up for that? I mean, the dude has played 14 games total in the past 2 seasons, numerous different injuries. I'm looking at knee injuries, which, always scare me, especially for, a corner who you need that, lateral movement. You need to be that dog. You need that fast twitch. And so I don't like multiple knee injuries. Yeah, I don't know. It scares me. The injuries scare me. So I'm probably staying away from Jair Alexander.
If I'm thinking with I want to conquer the world, give me every good player in the NFL on this roster so we can just win without a doubt. I'm saying I'm adding Jair Alexander. He's one of the best cornerbacks when available in the NFL. Let's add him to this team that had some holes, and we did our best to plug them this offseason, but it still is not going to be perfect. But if I'm thinking about thinking with my reasonable side of the brain, which is a lot smaller than the other side, and like what you're saying, I 100% agree with you. The availability is your best ability. And I mean, you just went through his numbers. He's missed a ton of games over his past his 20 of the last 34 regular season games since 2023. He still had 2 years left on his $84 million deal that he signed in 2022. So the Packers are eating some money to let him go. He was already holding out mini camp, trying to get a new deal in restructured. So it's not only the fact that he's always injured. It's the kind of still that fact that he wants to be paid like one of the top cornerbacks and is available all the time, and he has that attitude. So he probably isn't a Dan Campbell guy, which I can respect. Like I would honestly be shocked if they were to get some deal to get Jair Alexander into Detroit. I mean, he's just kind of like the opposite of what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes really tries to amplify. So I would be shocked if they did bring him here. But again, I want to conquer the world, and I want every good player that we need in order to do that. But if nothing else, he's not going to be on the Green Bay Packers anymore, and that's going to help Detroit a whole hell of a lot. Jared Goff is, having a glass of wine somewhere, cheers in Jair Alexander for being tough with the Green Bay Packers organization and getting the hell out of the NFC North.
Yeah, let's hope he definitely gets out of the NFC North. And if the Lions want him, that's fine, and maybe they take a swing on him, and maybe those injuries are just things of the past. But no, I'm staying away personally. He's not available. He doesn't play, so I don't want him.
Availability is your best ability, and if we've learned anything this past year, injuries absolutely suck, and it can derail what is Super Bowl contending rosters.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put our chips to the middle with Terry and Arnold and DJ Reed and see what we have with those guys on the outside and Amik Robertson and some of those guys. So let's roll with our guys. I'm here for it.
Hell yeah.
So that was our Detroit Lions news. Again, not exactly directly tied to the Detroit Lions, but I think the Zadarius Smith stuff is important. I think hopefully this time next week we might have a Zadarius Smith deal to be talking about and really have an idea of what this roster will be. I think that one, maybe like we said, that one could end up happening. I think outside of that one, that's all you're really gonna that's all we're gonna get. Like this roster is pretty much all done outside of possibly adding him, and there might be some miscellaneous other releases or trades as guys continue to hold out from training camps and mini camps, stuff like that. Some teams and owners might get a little fed up with that, but I think we're pretty much all set on there. So let's jump into some more stuff. I got some world is ending Tiger stuff that I need you to talk me off the ledge. And I know that's dramatic. And before anyone, I already know what the comments are going to say, what people are going to be talking about. Like, oh, well, Tyler, you and Kyle have been just salivating at the Detroit Tigers for the last 8 weeks. And you're absolutely right. We deserved to do so. Like, they were playing really, really good. They started the season hotter than anyone. They still have the best record in baseball. But my dumb brain starts to see these cracks, and it just concerns me. And I talked about it. I think I've talked about it across a few different teams that, like, maybe it's just because I've seen really great regular seasons, and then when it comes down to the playoffs and stuff, we burn out with the Lions last year, and the Tigers ended up, their weaknesses were exposed in the playoffs and stuff. So maybe it's just a little bit of trauma there. But I'm a little bit concerned with some of the regression from the guys in which started the season so hot, a reason that we were the best team in baseball for so long, for the first month or two of the season. Some of these guys are starting to trail off a little bit. So I have just a few numbers in which I want to just go over with you, and then I'm sure you can. I want you to sort of walk me away from this ledge, if you will.
Let's do it.
All right, so these are a few of the guys in which I think everyone would agree were major reasons in which we got off to such a hot start, right? I think the main ones that, like, everyone expected Kerry Carpenter to be back and healthy and play well. Everyone expected Riley Green to be, playing at an all-star level. I think the main guys in which we didn't see coming and we didn't see starting the season so hot were Spencer Torkelson, Javi Baez, Trey Sweeney, if you will, guys that like are playing fantastic. I think Zach McKinstry as well. And these are guys that started the season extremely hot. So I want to just go over some of those three guys in particular, their first kind of half the season, and then how they've played in the second half of that first half of the second quarter of the season, if you will. Mm-hmm. So Spencer Torkelson, his first 38 games, he hit 10 home runs, batted .254 batting average, 40 strikeouts, had an OPS of 907. So, we're essentially going to go with 10 home runs, .254 batting average, an OPS of 907. In his last 26 games, so then the second sort of half of the first half of the season, he has batted .211. So that's down, 40 points or so. 5 home runs, so half the home runs, and has an OPS of 743. So his OPS is still high. He's still getting decent contact, but his batting average is well down. And Spencer Torkelson, a guy that we've talked about, like he's a prototypical power hitter. He's gonna probably knock on hitting 30 to 40 home runs a season, and you're gonna be happy if he bats 235, like 230, 235, hitting 40 home runs is what you take out of a power hitter like that. He was doing that to start the season with 243. He's now down to 211, and his strikeouts are up to 25. His home runs have cut in half. It's a little bit less games, so add a few home runs to that if you will, if you want to, just to make it more even. But we're talking about 11 home runs for the first 35 or so, and then just 5 home runs for the second half of the season there. So he's the first one. Diving into the next guy, Javi Baez. Javi came out of the gate hotter than anyone in baseball. If he were to keep that up, he would be legit MVP status. So for his first 30 games, he had 3 home runs, batting average of 317, and an OPS of 835. So the power really wasn't there, but he was getting on base. His strikeouts were at 26, and his batting average 317. In his most recent 26 games, so almost a pretty split sample size there, he has, again, 3 home runs, so the power has stayed really level, but his strikeouts have gone to 20, and his batting average has dropped to 212 with an OPS of 571. 571, well below the league average. We've talked about OPS before. It's on base percentage plus slugging, so it's kind of just a real great all-encompassing level to figure out how a player is batting. League average is, I think, like 700 maybe. So Javi Baez started the season batting, 880 or something. He's now, the second half of the season, batting only 571, and his strikeout rate is still relatively high. He was able to kind of mask that for the first half of the season, but his strikeout rate is still relatively high. Jumping to Trey Sweeney, first half of the season, he hit 3 home runs, batting average of 269 and an OPS of 732, which for a guy that kind of you didn't want Javi Baez at shortstop. Trey kind of seemed like maybe your next guy. So like those numbers for who you think would maybe be your next shortstop, fantastic numbers. Cut to his next 25 games. He has just one home run, batting average of 139, and an OPS of 336. So that is, I mean, those numbers are well below league average and are very deserving of a send down to AAA. And so I need you to just talk me off this ledge a little bit. And I think the overall numbers in which the Detroit Tigers and how they're playing so well are starting to concern me a little bit. The deeper numbers, the more you dig into them, is a little bit more concerning.
Yeah, lot to unpack there, and I appreciate you doing the heavy lifting and getting a lot of really good stats there. I will do my best to talk you off this ledge. I guess first thing in my mind, you know, it's the last thing you talked about with Trey Sweeney. I don't think anyone really expected Trey Sweeney to be your not only your everyday shortstop, but you know maybe we were expecting everyday shortstop this year, but certainly not long term. I feel like, you know, when we got him from the Dodgers, I don't even think he was like one of their top 5 prospects. So yes, he kind of stepped up into a bigger role, and he was, you know, pretty good in the playoffs last year. Had a hot start to this season. So now we're thinking, well, maybe he could be the guy. And now obviously we see him slumping. But yeah, I just feel like the expectations for Trey Sweeney weren't ever huge. So I'm definitely not hitting the alarm that, you know, Trey Sweeney is slumping. I mean, I think at some point we all expected to fill that shortstop position with a better player long term. So certainly not hitting the panic button there. Torque, yeah, his average is down a little bit, but I still love the pop in his bat that I'm seeing. I think he's taking a much better approach at the plate. He's taking more walks. I think his walk rate is like 12%, which is very good. And yeah, I mean, he's still raking. He hit a home run tonight. I don't know if you saw it, Tyler. He hit a home run tonight. That's 16 on the season for him. He's 9th in the MLB in RBIs. So yeah, Torque, and he's on his way to being an all-star. I do believe that. So not hitting the panic button at all on Torque. Javi is a very interesting one. We've talked about Javier Baez a lot on this podcast this season, and for good reason. He started off awesome. I do think that Javier Baez is in a position where water is finding its level a little bit. With that being said, we are still getting very much a plus version of Javi compared to the versions that we've gotten the past 2 seasons in Detroit, 2 or 3 seasons, however long he's been in Detroit. We're getting a much better version of him now. So yeah, you know, I didn't expect him to hit 300 for the entire season. That would be insane given how he's been the last couple of years. So yeah, he's gonna slump. He's gonna struggle a little bit. That's kind of what Javi does. But as long as we're still getting 250, a batting average of 250 with at least a little bit of pop, and we've seen flashes of pop in his bat too, I think we are absolutely playing with house money. So no reason to be on that ledge for Javi Baez. A couple more things. The Tigers won tonight. That's big. In their last 15 games, they are 11-4. So I don't know really how you can be on the ledge when you have the best team in baseball. 11-4 last 15, 13-7 in their last 20, and coming off the biggest series win of the season, in my opinion. You know, when you play the second best team in baseball, you're the best team in baseball, and you beat them twice in 3 games. I am extremely happy there, and there was a lot of really good things to unpack in that series as well. A lot of awesome plays in the field, some crazy plays that I've never seen in my life. Looking at the Dingler and McKinstry play, that foul ball there. I mean, they're doing things really, really good. They're raking. They raked against the Cubs, sans that middle game, and yeah, Skubal was awesome again. He shoved in game 1 of that series, so I'm feeling really good. Just a couple more things tonight. If I told you that Zach McKinstry hit 1 triple, you would say he had a pretty good night, right?
I know he's like top 5 in the AL in triples, so I would say that's another one. Yeah, that's a good night.
Well, I would be lying because he didn't hit 1 triple tonight. He hit 2. McKinstry hit 2 triples. He is he's been a little bit up and down, but overall he's had an incredible season in year. I think he's like 29, so really coming into his own as a player. He's one of the reasons why the Tigers have had so much success. And 2 triples tonight. Riley Green, 13th in the MLB in RBIs. And just the last thing, just one more gold star. We've talked about Skubal a ton. I don't need to talk about him. I'm going to talk about his catcher, though, Dylan Dingler, or Dillinger, however you want to pronounce it. He is playing like one of the best catchers in the league. The way that he gunned down that Cubs batter trying to steal second, I think it might have been the hardest throw in like the history of the MLB. It was just an absolute rocket, a laser beam. So there's so much good happening with this Tigers team. You got to get off that ledge now, Tyler.
I'm so with you with Dylan. I was at the game this past week in one of the Cubs games for my dad's birthday, and my wife just out of nowhere was like, "Who's your favorite Tiger?" And I was like, "I think it might be Dylan Dingler." He's so electric, and he's just kind of gunning people down. So I'm with you on there. And mind you, obviously these stats are a little bit cherry picked. Like I left Zach McKinstry out there. He was a huge reason we got off to that hot start, and he still remains red hot. For some reason, he just continues to hit triples and just can't hit home runs. But like I'll take it. And I mean, I know what you're saying. I know what everyone's saying, Tyler. The Detroit Tigers have had 6 series against top 10 teams this season. The Dodgers, the Mariners, the Yankees, the Padres, the Giants, the Cubs. They're 5-1 in those series. And that one was obviously the Dodgers to start the season at LA. So like I get that. I get that's the reason. But it's just, for me, since 5/18, so since the middle of May, the Tigers are 25th in batting average with an average of 228, 26th in OBP with 298, second in slugging, 24th in OPS, and 19 in runs scored. So like it's numbers like that like just give me a little bit. Everything's going to get harder as the season goes on and we get into October. Everything's going to get more condensed. Everything's going to get, water's going to find its level. So I'm just a little bit concerned with stuff like that. And you and I talked. I think that just, I hope, I pray, that just just tells Chris Ilitch and Scott Harris like you're seeing this little bit of slump from some of these guys. This hot start to the season might not last the entire season. You have to go out at the trade deadline and get a game-changing bat and get a game-changing swing and miss arm for the bullpen. You have to. If you actually plan to make some noise in the postseason, you need to be prepared for these type of slumps.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely need another bat. And yeah, I think that was a 2-week stretch that you gave those stats. And yeah, I like to see that they're still winning even in stretches where they're struggling at the plate. And I think that's a big gold star to the starting pitching, the relief pitching. The pitching's been awesome. I think that this pitching staff can keep us in games where we do struggle behind the plate. Overall, I mean, just not hitting the panic button at all with this, semi-slump for a couple players. Team in general, a little bit down on the batting average. I think it'll pick right back up. I think the MLB season is so long and there's going to be ebbs and flows, and it's good to see that the boys are still winning games despite, some micro struggles.
Yeah. And like I said, I know what everyone's going to be saying about this. We're dumb, emotional fans. That's what being a fan is. It's fun. When your team wins a great game, there's nothing that can stop you winning the World Series. When your team blows a terrible game, you're going to blow it. You want to blow it all up, and you're the worst team in the world. That being emotional like that and overreacting is why we do things. Is why we podcast. Is why we chat about sports. It's being the high highs and the low lows, and that there's really no medium there. So before everyone attacks me in the comments, Kyle talked me off the ledge, and we're on to bigger and better things. Okay, let's keep moving forward. So for the next segment, we have a little bit of a debate. So I saw this online. I think it was Barstool Detroit posted this question to the internet, and it struck me. I thought it was really interesting because both in their own way are super important. But that debate is, what is this a bigger offseason for, the Detroit Pistons or the Detroit Red Wings? Again, you could argue both, and for separate reasons. Like they both need separate things to happen, and for different reasons for the fans. But I want to debate this with you. I want to hear what your thoughts are, and then I'll give my side, and I will try and poke holes in yours because I'm sure mine will be right. So what do you think? Who has the most important offseason coming up here? The Detroit Red Wings or the Detroit Pistons?
So I guess let me just unpack that a little bit. So when you say bigger offseason, are we talking most important offseason, most holes to fill? A little bit, is this can I take it and run with it however I want?
Take it and run with it however. That's what we do here. We just take things and run with it. I personally think it's like the most important, like they're at the most pivotal, jobs are on the line. We can make some noise in one way or another. Maybe windows are closing. The most important to the organization.
Yeah, most important. I think this is easy for me. It's got to be the Red Wings. I think that this team has been in purgatory for the last probably 4 seasons, at least 3 seasons, where you go into every season thinking, all right, we have young talent, we have enough guys in that locker room to make a splash, to at least make a playoffs. I think that at least the last 2 seasons alone, the expectation has been playoffs. The roster is good enough, and so with that in mind, to see this team struggle as much as they have the past 3 seasons, and to go ups and downs and firing coaches and going through extreme hot stretches followed by just the lowest of lows and missing out on the playoffs time and time again. I think this is an extremely important offseason for a team that they that the status quo is just not cutting it. It's not cutting it at all. This team has, quite frankly, not been even close to where they should be in a decade-long rebuild, especially given that you have hit on some draft picks, you have some young talent, and you have some guys. You have some guys in that locker room, and to see them continue to struggle day in and day out, I do think that this offseason is so important for them. They need to build this roster. Whether that is in the draft, hitting on a draft pick, which I think they're drafting like, I don't know, 13th or whatever. So I'm not super stoked about what this pick might be, and even so, that player is probably not even going to be in the league for at least a couple of years minimum. So that means that you got to do it in free agency, and I think Stevie Y has a ton of work to do to get this roster in a state where you are actually contending and you're going to make playoffs and maybe make a run in the playoffs. And so yeah, I think that it's got to be the Red Wings because there's got to be changes made.
I think, again, I could see the argument for both sides. I think you definitely could argue it's for the Red Wings. I think there's jobs on the line when it comes to the Red Wings. I think if they don't have a big offseason and it proves next year, I think jobs will be lost. I think positions will have to be replaced and refilled. I'm going to take devil's advocate here and say that I think it's the Detroit Pistons, because I think we kind of similar to how the Tigers were last season. We saw them come on at the very end of the season, be these gritty Tigers, and just go on a run that we were not seeing across the MLB. Like no other team was winning like we were. And so when you came into this new season, it was kind of like, okay, now we need to know, was that a fluke? Was that just the boys got hot and it was a classic? We were seeing a beach ball being thrown down from the mound and crushing everything. Is this retainable? And I think the Pistons are kind of in a similar situation in which, like, they had a great season. They had a season that no one saw coming. We were going to be happy to see them kind of scratching and clawing to try and get a play-in spot. Like, all I wanted as a fan and as a writer for the Pistons and a stupid podcaster was, like, give me games in which, like, I'm watching our score and I'm checking the scores of other teams to see, like, okay, we're 2 games back. Like, oh, they lost their game. We won our game. Now we're a game and a half back. Or, just kind of keeping it close and entertaining at the end of the season. They blew past that. So we excelled and blew past expectations. So I think this offseason is extremely important because, A, we need to do what we can to insulate this roster to say, like, okay, if that was a fluke, if it was just kind of like Malik Beasley had one of the best 3-point shooting seasons in NBA history, and he's not going to repeat that in the level in which he did, we need to insulate him and insulate those around us. So, like, when he does come down to earth, we are not just suddenly falling flat on our face and losing 40 games or whatever. We're ready for that regression. I think that's kind of the main thing for me. And on top of that, you kind of got an idea of what Cade and Jaden Ivey can be playing alongside of each other. But at the same time, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, we didn't get one single game with the lineup of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren. We didn't see a single game with them starting alongside of each other. So now it's okay. Do you want to roll with those guys and just run it back? Do you want to maintain the additions of Dennis Schroeder and Malik Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr.? Do you want to try and add somebody and not roll the dice with that starting lineup that we didn't see last year? So I think there's a lot of questions in play. I think there's a lot more question marks out there when it comes to the Pistons than with the Red Wings in a sense, at least in my brain. And I know I'm more of an NBA fan than an NHL fan, so maybe that's just some bias there. But I think playing the devil's advocate, it is more important for
Hmm.
the Pistons to insulate the guys that they have in order to make sure that if there is a natural regression this upcoming season, we don't suddenly find ourselves in the middle of the pack again. And now, I mean, the clock is ticking for these boys. The clock's ticking for the Red Wings, in which like Larkin's getting older. Like we said, jobs are on the line. The clock's ticking in a separate way for the Pistons, in that like Cade's on a supermax deal now. He's getting even more money because he's an All NBA player. Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are due extensions. They're probably going to get them this offseason. If they won't, they'll get them next offseason. Asara Thompson and Ron Holland are right behind them, going to need deals, eventually. So like the clock's ticking on these young guys, and the money's going to start drying up. So that's why I think the Pistons may be maybe a little bit more of an important offseason, that Trajan Langdon's got his work cut out for him. And they don't have a first round draft pick. So, they got to do a little bit more work and talk about a second round pick. So that's my take.
For sure. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think this is a very pivotal, it's a huge offseason for the Pistons as well. And I'm looking at the Eastern Conference right now, and I don't know. I don't want to say it's completely wide open, but it is
I think it is.
wide open. It's as wide open as it's been in years, right? Probably since LeBron has left it. So yeah, it's huge. You're looking at Boston. Is kind of crumbling right now. Obviously, we're not rooting for injuries or anything like that or celebrating them. But with Tatum going down, I mean, they're in now a mini rebuild. I'm fairly confident in saying that. So you have basically one of the evil empires of the East that have been dominating. They won a title last year, and now they're in a rebuild. So who's going to step up? I just think you do have young teams like the Pacers. Obviously they're playing right now, and yeah, there's the Cavs are the Cavs. Seems like they're awesome in the regular season, then they crumble in the playoffs. But other than that, I mean, I'm not looking at the East and saying there's that many great teams, and I think that this is a great chance for the Pistons to step up into that next echelon of teams. Of course they finished 6th last year. It was a great season, to your point, Tyler. But yeah, I think they can step up again, and I think these players are going to develop, and maybe they sign a couple in the offseason. Yeah, it's a huge offseason. I would love to see them take another step forward. So I'm with you there. I'm still going with the Wings, but I see your point.
Yeah, it's important for both teams because when you're like right there, and they definitely got there two very different ways, the Wings and the Pistons, to get like right where they are, which is like, and the Pistons made the playoffs. The Pistons had more success, but the Wings are right there, kind of at the edge of the playoffs. So, like, in my opinion, right on the edge of where you want to be, where there's there's a hope. When you get there, it's so important to. There's two ways you can go. Like, you need to go all in, but it's so important not to go in all in early, because then you're not ready there, and you push all your chips to the center of the table, and you're not ready, and you got to blow it up. And if you wait too long, then you guys are older, they're, injured, you got to start paying guys, and you miss your window. Like that window is so small, and both these teams are starting to encroach on it in at different parts of it, right? So it's so important to find that perfect time. And I don't know. I got more faith in Trajan than I do in Stevie Y. So yeah, like I said, I saw that on I think Instagram. So shout out Barstool Detroit. It was a great posed question for debate. I think you and I are pretty much in lockstep there, but you're leaning a little more towards the Red Wings. I'm a little bit more towards the Pistons. Just as a side note, not related to the Pistons, did you see what they're talking about doing with the new All-Star format next year?
Truly have not seen a single tweet. I have not seen anything on that.
So the All-Star in the NBA has struggled for the past few years. At the All-Star game, the score is always like 300 to 400 or whatever.
Yeah.
They've struggled.
No one
Adam
watches
Silver,
that shit.
Nobody does. Adam Silver came out last week and said that they are going to adopt the same format as the NHL and do the U.S. versus the world. So,
hell yeah.
At first, I'm like, hell yeah! Everybody loved the Four Nations. Like, that was so awesome seeing that, and it really. I actually truly don't quite know who. When we'll, as we get closer to that time, like, we'll break down. Even though it's not Pistons, we can break down the rosters and stuff. Fingers crossed, Cade would be on that team, but it would be. I don't know who would win U.S. versus the world. Now, it is a little people. Some people are a little bit upset with it because if you think about it, probably you'll have some more guys that wouldn't normally make an all-star game make the team, because maybe like the U.S. kind of ran out of some guys. So some guys that, because the world team would be on that roster, and, some guys would be pulled up or whatever. And vice versa. Some world guys would probably make the world roster because that roster would be built out with more U.S. guys. So I thought that was interesting. I'm all for it. I can't wait for it. Again, chances are we'll see Cade playing for Team US. We'll see how that ends up going for the NBA.
Dude, I'm just thinking about it. I mean, that world team is so stacked. I don't know how they wouldn't win, right? I mean, I'm looking at
Jokic,
Joker,
Giannis.
Giannis, Luca, SGA, like all those guys are not American. So
Yeah, SGA's Canadian. Yeah.
uh, shit, it's gonna be. I mean, it'd be a great game. I mean, we can talk. There's so many good Americans. Yeah, now I wish Tatum wasn't injured because we definitely need him on our side. But yeah, no, that's cool. I like it. I think that the NHL was a real trendsetter with the Four Nations, and
It worked,
it worked. Yeah, people watched. The viewers were way up. Those games were incredible to watch from a viewer standpoint, and all the players bought in too. And they were laying it all on the line. So
Yeah.
I mean, if the NBA can even if it's half as good of a product to watch, it's going to be pretty sweet. So yeah, good on them. Good on Adam Silver.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get to you got some golf stuff for us, and then we'll wrap up with some grit of the week. But let's jump into some golf.
Yeah, let's do it. Ron Burgundy with the golf. Are you looking at your teleprompter there? So yes, it is U.S. Open week at Oakmont Country Club in Pennsylvania, and we're in for a show. This one has all the workings to be really, really fun, and I'll tell you why. Oakmont is known as being a tremendously difficult golf course to play, and I think that the U.S. Open Committee, the PGA, is doing everything possible to make it as hard as humanly possible on in this country club. So the greens are rolling insanely fast. There's this thing called a stimp meter, which I don't know how it works. I don't know if this is a device that is just made for measuring how fast greens roll, or if I have no idea. Don't pretend to be an expert. All I know, greens are rolling really, really fast. The rough around the greens, literally the entire course, if you don't hit the fairway, you are punished so badly. I mean, literally, like you can drop the ball and it vanishes and you don't even know where it is. I mean, if I played this course, without spectators, I literally wouldn't be able to finish. I would run out of balls on like the fourth hole, like just because I'm always spraying it around. So luckily these PGA guys, they have spectators. It's a major, so if you blast it OB or even anywhere that's not in the fairway, they're going to find your ball. But I mean, good luck hitting it out of it, and especially around the green. It looks just so insane. We're going to see some really high numbers. A lot of people are saying that they're expecting the winning score to be above par, or at least there's a good chance that the winner of the US Open will shoot above par. That hasn't happened since Brooks Koepka won at Shinnecock. I think it was I had it up. I think it's 2018, the 2018 U.S. Open. Brooks shot +1 through 4 rounds. So I think it's going to happen again. I mean, this course is going to be just an absolute gauntlet. And from a fan perspective, it's going to be fun to watch. These guys are going to struggle just like we do.
And as somebody who doesn't know 100% about the tournaments and the season and stuff like that, U.S. Open is a fairly big one, right?
Oh yeah, dude, it's huge. I think if we were ranking golf majors, for me, yeah, Masters is one. That's easy. Everyone's gonna tell you the Masters is one. That's chalk for sure. But then I would probably say U.S. Open second. I mean, this is a big tournament. They play in some of the best courses around the country. It's a rotating tournament, but I think it's really special. I would put that 2. I'd probably put the Open Championship 3. I think it's also really special over in wherever it is, Britain, Scotland. I think this year it might be in either Scotland or Ireland. But and then PGA Championship. I just don't really. I still like it. It's a major, but for me it's the 4th for sure. But yeah, U.S. Open. It's huge, man.
All right. Well, then call your shot, my guy. Who's gonna win the U.S. Open?
Yeah. I actually haven't given it that much thought. You know what? You went with him last time, and it absolutely paid off for you. I'm going chalk here. I haven't looked at the betting odds. This guy has to be the odds-on favorite. He's incredible. I'm going Scotty Scheffler though. I mean, I think that he's playing incredible golf right now. If he can keep it, in play, hit fairways. And I probably should have, done more research on like which guys are, better at hitting more fairways. Cause I do think that if you're spraying the ball more, you're going to get punished at Oakmont. But yeah, screw it. Yeah, I think his putting is good enough that he's going to be able to putt on these insanely fast greens. And yeah, I'm going Scotty on this one. But to be completely honest, I haven't given it any thought or looked at all. So that's just a gut reaction.
Yeah, so according to ESPN, Scotty is the favorite at plus 270 to win.
Oh, geez.
I have done a little bit more research than you in that I did Google some names and who is going to be competing. Who's going to win is going to be Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley is going to win. He's 75 to 1. He is, all my research is pointing to him. All my models and everything, all my tests that I've set up, it just continues to point to Keegan Bradley. So Keegan Bradley is going to be your winner. You heard it here first.
Hell yeah, Keegs. I love that, man. You might have to sprinkle a little bit of money on him. Although if you do, then he won't win. So maybe don't do that. But
Yeah, as we found out with all the home runs Kerry Carpenter hit last week, whatever I touch turns to shit. And so I'm just going to say that and put that out into the internet and stand away far, far, far away from it and wait to see what happens. So those are my picks. That's your pick. So thank you for that update. Okay, let's wrap up the show with some grit of the week. You want to kick us off?
I'll kick us off. Yeah. And bear with me on this one. I got a little creative. I got a little cute with this one. I'm so sick of going chalk in grit of the weeks. And so yeah, I'm gonna be out there a little bit. My grit of the week, the city of Detroit.
Okay.
Specifically, Detroit Tigers fans, as we did talk about, the MLB's two best teams clashed in Comerica Park last weekend. 1,009 fans were in attendance throughout those 3 games. That was the second highest attendance for a 3-game series in Detroit since 2015, second highest, only behind the playoff clinching series against the White Sox last season. We know how spectacular the end of the season was last year. This was the second highest attendance that the Tigers have had in the last decade. And I'm really proud of Tigers fans. I mean, it's easy, right? When we have the best team in baseball, you're hosting the Cubs, the best team in the NL, second best team in baseball. It's easy to think that, fans are going to show up, but not only do they showed out, but they showed out in record fashion for the Tigers. And that's why that's grit, baby. So I'm giving grit of the week to the city of Detroit and Tigers fans for 121,000 of y'all, including you. You were at one of those games.
I absolutely love that's a fantastic pick. They showed out so incredibly well.
Yeah.
I just want to say, so you just pointed out the last two. Oh wait, no, I was gonna say, I thought you mentioned the last time this many fans were at Comerica was, you said, the White Sox clinching series last year.
The last in the 3-game series, yeah. So there were more than 121,000, for that series.
I'm surprised that there wasn't. Was that regular season? I'm surprised there wasn't that many at the Astros series. Or what series did we go to that game? Was that Astros or was that the Guardians?
That was the Guardians. So we only had 2 home playoff games for that Guardian series. 3 of them were in Cleveland. So that's probably why. I mean, just sheer stadium volume. They couldn't.
I was going to say
just 2 games.
I might have been at both the last 2 games because, right, I was there for the Cubs game this past week. I love that. The atmosphere was incredible. The weather was beautiful. We did have a little bit of smog going on from the fires up in Canada, but nonetheless, it was beautiful. The Tigers were, I mean, we went through the Tigers and how important that series was. And the fans, they definitely fed from the fans. The fans gave them as much energy as they needed. I love that pick. That's a fantastic pick. Way to step out from chalk and just absolutely hit a home run yourself with that pick.
Well, my dumb brain was like, "Oh, are we going Scooble again? He's awesome. Love Scooble." And then I'm like, "No, I come on, I can't do it. I got to do better than that."
You're addicted to picking Scooby for grit of the week.
I'm so addicted.
My grit of the week, I'm going to go on these kind of same brain wavelength there. I'm not going to give it to the entire city of Detroit, but we are sticking with the Tigers. I'm going with Kerry Carpenter because we just talked. Kerry had a great season, or last 2 seasons against Chicago in general. So he had the 3-homer game against the White Sox. But I'm picking Kerry Carpenter, and shout out my dad because we were both talking about this at the game. Kerry, I remember a time when Kerry was a liability in the outfield. He was an insane bat, but balls were going to get by him in the outfield, and he was going to struggle a little bit. This past series, and we talked about how important the series against the Cubs was, the number 1 team versus the number 2 team. He got it done with his bat. He batted against them in their 3 games. He batted 300 with an OPS of 800. Had 2 doubles, 3 hits, 1 run. So he got it done as always with his bat without hitting a home run, which we hope to see. But he still got it done. But what he did incredibly well was his defense. I thought this past weekend he had 2 different plays. The one play that truly kind of ended the game for the stop the Cubs from any sort of comeback, where the one in the outfield climbing the wall, maybe a little bit exaggerated in which he caught it and then kind of moved it back even closer to the fence and as a home run, but he robbed a home run nonetheless to really give the Tigers that win and the second game against the Cubs. And then even the game that I was at on Sunday, he had an insane throw from right field to gun the runner down at home plate to keep that game in check, to make sure that the Cubs don't mount any sort of comeback. So he gets my grit of the week just because not only was he getting it done with his bat like he always does against the second place team, the Chicago Cubs, but he was doing it in the field, which is so important to me in the game that you and I talked about in the last few weeks, that our bats have been a little bit slumping. The field's got to come alive. We got to be able to play well in the field and keep those runs off the board to win in any way we can. So he gets my grit of the week for his defense, not just his offense this week.
Hell yeah, that's huge. That catch, the put out at the plate was great too. I mean, he threw just a missile. But yeah, that catch, robbing a home run, or maybe it was high off the wall, whatever it was. I mean, that was an outstanding catch as well. Yeah, it was incredible, dude. And yeah, I think there was how many Cubs were on base for that? Like, was the bases loaded for that? It was an insane play. Saved multiple runs at minimum.
Yeah. So he gets my grit of the week. So shout out the entire city of Detroit. I don't know. I guess I am in the city of Detroit right now, so I will accept it on Detroit's behalf.
I think you just won a grit of the week, yeah, which is first time in Gridiron Report history that one of our own, and you could call it nepotism. I'm not calling it nepotism. I think you earned that fair and square.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank my parents. I'd like to thank the city of Detroit, everyone who empowered me to win this award. And so, and also shout out Carrie. Carrie, come on to the podcast, accept your award. We'll talk about how your defense and getting better and everything there. So, all right. That is our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find Kyle on Twitter at Kyle_Marino. You can find me on Twitter at Dutton_Tyler, and my writing at both Piston Powered and Champaign Athletics. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram at Gridiron Report, on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1, or you can watch us on YouTube at Gridiron Report. As these next few weeks come and go, we're going to start to put out even more content on the Instagram, on the YouTube, try and get some more stuff out for you guys. Finally, you can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That number is 313-306-7939. And if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars and leave us a review saying so. Make sure you download the episode, not just listen to it. It's a technicality that allows us to understand how many listeners we have per week. And continue to share the show. Let everyone know as we get into the offseason and start moving into the NFL preseason, stuff like that. Let your family and friends know to give us a listen. We'll try and give you guys as much Detroit sports stuff as we can. So thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Thanks, y'all. Let's go Tigers. Let's go with the roar.
Journey roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.